Hey everybody, welcome back to Suckless Saturday and our series on timers and why we feel like they're important. Steph and I are going to talk about what you can do with the data that you just gathered from last week's assignment.
You need a shot timer because that which gets measured gets worked on. The Range Tech Timer is the official timer of active self-protection because it is versatile, reliable, feature-rich, and very economical. Check out all it can do at the link below.
All right, Steph, so last week we told people go out there and write it down, figure out where they're at, and start gathering some data so they understand where they are. How can we use that data then in, let's say, a self-defense scenario?
Yeah, I mean, you can use the data in a couple different ways. We talked at length last week, so I won't do it again this week, but about how you can use that data in decision making for your training and making a path toward where you want to be or how you want to maintain that training or whatever. So you can use it for decision making in your training, but someone coming from a defensive point of view, being able to make decisions in a defensive encounter is obviously, you know, it's gold, it's money, that's what you need to be able to do. That's one reason people talk about competition shooting being such a great thing for self-defenders to jump into, because it teaches you to learn how to think with a gun and under some pressure. And that's a lot of what a defensive encounter is. So what am I talking about specifically? So if you are in a defensive encounter and someone is, and you're in this certain situation, if you don't have any idea how quickly you can get an accurate shot on target, it's going to make it very difficult to know if someone has a gun pointed at you, if you can draw and get your gun into the fight. John has broken this down in an incredible way on the Ask Facebook page. He's done other videos about it. I think we have one on Extra that if we could get that linked in the comments, that would be great. Talking through the different decisions you can make if someone is pointing a gun at you and they are looking right at you and their finger is on the trigger, there's little you can do about that. Just the way the brain works, the way you're reacting in decision making, you cannot beat them. However, if they look away even a little bit and you know your draw to first shot, you can get a gun into the fight and they can't beat you. So the slower your draw is, you might not be able to do it unless you see the back of their head, unless they turn. And that happens with frequency in gunfights because they will be pointing a gun at someone, threatening someone, and then they're looking around. Okay, so if you know, hey.
So you just did the whole range thing where you kept the gun down.
Haka?
Yeah.
But now, it's not the defender, it's the bad guy.
Right, but we don't see bad guys do this and keep the gun pointed at the target. You see the bad guy do this and he's looking around and waving that. So understand that there is some science in there. The 4 science guys talk about this, that, you know, the average Joe out there, you know, has a 0.25 second reaction time. And so 0.25 seconds is about the length of the beep on your timers, right? So you understand how long that is. But if he turns all the way around, it takes him 2.5 seconds to realize you did something, and then all of this 0.25. I suck at this. But again, understand this is averages. This isn't everybody. And again, if you're in a gunfight, it's a bad day. But with this, armed with this data and your gun, you are a better defender.
Right. So when he is pointing a gun at you, he's having some expectation that you're going to be getting the money out and all of these things. If you break from that expectation, like the OODA loop talks about, Colonel Cooper's OODA loop, he has to react to that and reorient and respond to that, and that takes time. Our brains are just not physically possible to process it faster than they can process it. Now they can process it pretty fast. We're talking quick. You know, tenths and hundreds of seconds that it can be processed. But first they have to see that you're reacting, they have to process that, then they have to plan their own reaction, and then they have to do that again. We've got just, you know, a couple of tenths of seconds there. If you know how fast it is and you see the back of this bad guy's head and you know you have a sub 2 second draw to first shot on reliably and under pressure, then you can make a decision that you can go, that is your go time. If you have a 1 second draw to first shot, you have to see very, very little. You just have to see kind of the side of their face, you know. But you need to know where you're at, or you can't make that decision. You just have to say, the gun is pointed at me. I have no idea if I can beat him. Because all he has to do, you have to draw and make some decisions and aim and pull the trigger and fire. All he has to do is that. So his decision-making process aside, if that's all if he just has to decide to do it and do it, he'll beat you. every time, or she, I guess.
Yep.
But without that data, you don't know. If you don't know, shot timer aside, from an accuracy standpoint, if you don't know how accurate you are at 25 yards and you find yourself in the, the proverbial situation that we all like to analyze to death, you're in the active shooter, someone's 75 yards away and there's people all around him, how am I going to do this? Okay, that it's a bit fantastical to do that.
Yeah.
However, it has happened to people, and people have made those shots because they knew they could make those shots.
Yeah.
But also, if you don't know that you can make that shot at, I would even say 25 yards, then you're potentially either not going to take the shot, which could be a problem because maybe you have the skill set to be able to do something, or you take the shot and you hurt someone else and you miss.
Yeah.
And that's not okay either. We actually did a church safety class many years ago where we started different people, moving them back to distance to find out, how far out they were accurate. And they found out that really no one on their team was accurate beyond 15 yards. And that was very eye-opening to them. They had no idea, without that data, they had no idea that they couldn't take a shot. I mean, they were even, somebody skipped a shot off the dirt and actually hit the target. It skipped up into the target, and he's like, yes. And I'm like, okay, except for little Johnny that's laying on the floor there that you skipped a bullet off him. But without that data, a 25-yard shot might, that's totally doable. I can do that. I would suggest if you haven't done it, you have an overinflated sense of what you can actually do. And if you're taking a really important shot from that far away, the zones where you can hit are so small. If you don't have the data to know what you can do, how fast you can do it, how accurate you can do it, it really stunts your decision making in a defensive encounter.
Yep, I agree. So having the data is almost more important than the skill, if you ask me, because if you don't, because you have to know what you can do. The skill, don't rake me over the coals over this, but understand that if you don't know, it's not worth it. So if some guy is pointing a gun in your face and turns around and gives you your back and you have no idea what your draw to first shot is, but you just think you can do it and you turn out to be one of those 5 or 6 second guys, 5 or 6 seconds is a long time for him to turn around and end your life. And that, so this is life and death stuff that we're talking about.
We've seen that on the channel in one of our church encounters. If we could even maybe link that in the comments, where a guy was trying to get to his gun and was not able to do it in time. And I would suggest either he didn't realize he couldn't get to his gun in time, or he decided it didn't matter and he was willing to at least try and do what he could do. That could also be possible. But he paid for that lack of knowledge, or sacrificed with his life for that. So yeah, I think, and we also saw.
And I feel like that's a great opportunity for us to learn from his sacrifice.
Exactly.
Is see that, listen, okay, he was literally sitting right next to that guy, or within arm's reach, and just couldn't get the gun out in time to do much with it. And so that is one that I'm like, okay, listen, I love to go fast. Everybody knows that I love to go fast and make the boom, and acceptable hits is my is my world, right? But at the end of the day, I have a pretty good idea that if I'm at arm's reach, I have a chance.
We like to make fun of you for lack of accuracy, but that's not really an accurate thing. You know exactly what you can do and how you can do it, and can modulate that to get it more accurate if need be. On the other side of that, and to speak to your previous point, we just had a video on the channel from Washington where the defender made a choice not to shoot because he didn't know if he could make the shot. Someone was pointing a rifle at him out of the window of a car, and he drew his gun, and it was a great use of force, and actually ended the threat, as we find very often. Just drawing your gun is often enough to end the threat. But he consciously made the choice, I don't know if I can hit that, and the background is messy enough, enough wide open spaces that he couldn't do it. Now, if he'd had to take that shot and didn't know if he could do it, and that not taking the shot had been the difference of whether or not this guy shot at him, knowing what you can do is important. And it wasn't that he didn't know. It wasn't that he knew he couldn't, he didn't know. Yeah.
And so so this week's assignment is gonna have you go home, get into your dry fire stuff, and figure out where you are, understand what you can do. Again, we had you write it down last week, write it down again this week, and now compare the numbers.
And in dry fire, you can learn about, at least speed, and if you're really good at and really honest about where your sights are or where your pistol mounted optic are, you can know how accurate you are as well. But at least if you're not quite there yet and aren't sure, at least we can work on where you're at with movement and where you're at, and is that where you want to be?
Yeah, and if it is, then great, then maintain that. If it's not, then let's come up with a plan that helps you get to where you want to be. And that's the part of this that I really love is helping folks figure out how to get from point A to point B. I'm figuring that out for myself as well. I always feel like I'm at point A and point B is the one that I never really reach, even though I get there from time to time.
You should be, especially if it's your job, you should be moving that point B all the time.
Exactly. So again, go out there in your dry fire, continue on with your notes that you started last week. Hopefully, if you didn't do this last week, then what you're going to do is you're going to draw and fire with a par time. You're going to draw 10 times. And you're going to figure out what your par time is where you get 10 perfect draws, where you see your sights were on target, you got a good trigger press. That's the assignment. And then the next step of that is drop your par time down about 0.2 of a second and see how many out of a 10 are still perfect. Go down 10 more or 0.2 more and do 10 more and see where you're at. Get that data so you can start a data point for yourself, and then you can make a plan. So thanks for watching. We will see you next week.